everybody has their thing when they're growing up, whether it's a sport or an activity or a hobby. Everyone has that one thing that they're really good at or they're really passionate about, and all their time and energy goes into it. You know what I'm talking about, right? I mean, y'all are growing up, like right now, so I bet you and your friends have that thing. Well, for me, soccer was that thing. I started playing at like 5 years old, and I basically didn't stop until I graduated high school. But things kind of changed during my senior year. I was far from the best soccer player around, and I knew that I wasn't going to play in college or anything like that, so I only played rec league soccer. But for my senior year, I decided I was going to go big. I was going to try out for the high school team. I was going to live out something I thought I would never do, walk onto the varsity team, start every game, and then ride off into the sunset. That was graduation. And heck, maybe I'd even win some awards or even a championship along the way. I felt pretty good about my chances to make the team until the first day of tryouts. It was obvious from the jump that this was just a different game than I was used to. Much quicker, much more physical, and with a much higher level of individual skill. It was a shock to the system, and honestly, I got completely outplayed on that first day. But it wasn't over yet. There were 2 more days to go. I still had time to turn it around, and I did. I got acclimated to the environment. I felt really good about what I brought to the table over the last 2 days, and I'll never forget the moment when the coach pulled me out of a drill we were running, took me to one side and said, "Ellis, thanks for trying out, but we're not going to have you be a part of our team this year." Not where you thought this story was heading, huh? It was in that moment that I was reminded of the reason why, despite my love of soccer, I hadn't tried out for the team earlier. I was afraid of finding out that I wasn't good enough to play on that level. I was afraid of rejection. The fear of being rejected can be a big source of stress and anxiety. Rejection can be a pretty powerful motivator, but one that causes us to not do something instead of going for it. And that something doesn't have to be trying out for a sports team. You can fear rejection in something as simple as talking to someone. What if they don't like me or the things that I like? What if they think I'm weird? What if they make fun of me or they're mean to me? Thoughts like those are enough to make all of us afraid of rejection. I mean, no one likes being let down or having their hopes dashed. But here's another thing nobody likes: the fact that rejection is a normal part of life. And yeah, it hurts. But what if we could learn how to deal with it? Today, we're going to look at how Jesus and his disciples handled rejection. And in the process, we'll learn how to overcome it when it's making us feel not okay. When you're feeling like all you do is get rejected, it's easy to feel like you're the only one it happens to, or the only one it's ever happened to. But that's far from the truth. In fact, I'm willing to bet you're not even the only one in the room you're watching this in who feels that way. Not only that, but there are people who came before us who dealt with rejection too. Even those who followed Jesus. Not like some of us do now, but those who literally followed him when he walked the earth. Now, because people opposed Jesus and the message he was trying to spread, Jesus' disciples also faced rejection all the time. But kind of like the story I told earlier, rejection didn't always come when they expected it. Then Jesus went around teaching from village to village. Calling the 12 disciples, to him, he began to send them out 2 by 2 and gave them authority over impure spirits. These were his instructions: take nothing for the journey except a staff. No bread, no bag, no money in your belts. Wear sandals, but not an extra shirt. Whenever you enter a house, stay there until you leave that town. And if any place will not welcome you or listen to you, leave that place and shake the dust off your feet as a testimony against them. So let's break this down a little bit. Jesus sends his 12 disciples out, 2 by 2, on a mission with some very specific instructions. They're sent to free people from the things that were plaguing them and invite them to the good news that he was telling everyone about. But Jesus also expects that when his disciples do this, some of the people they interact with will reject that truth, which is why he includes this last piece of instructions, telling the disciples to respond to rejection by shaking the dust off their feet. This might seem to us like a strange thing to do, but let's think about it in a way that makes more sense in our modern context. So my mom and my grandma have birthdays that are just a few days apart, October 20th and 23rd to be exact. So this past year, my wife Abby had the idea to throw them a joint birthday party that we would host at our house. Now, I've seen who Abby turns into when we host anything at our house. And those nightmares made me hesitant to go through with it, but eventually I agreed. It was everything I thought it would be, and then some, meaning that we prepared as if royalty was coming to our little one-story house in the middle of Powhatan. We legitimately spent the entire week leading up to the party cleaning some part of the house. And I can hear Abby now. We? And you know what? Yeah, we. Because this might not always be the case, but that week, I did my fair share. Anyways, the party went great. And at the end of the day, I'm really glad that we had it because despite all the cleaning and the stress, I know that Abby really loves hosting people. Hospitality is important to her, just like it was to the people in the disciples' day. In this culture and time in history, it was expected that people would take care of strangers and travelers because ignoring those people in your town meant leaving them exposed and endangered to the elements. So when the disciples were rejected, they took it as a sign that the people of that town weren't concerned with taking care of others. When Jesus commanded them to shake the dust off their feet, it was a way of saying, this town isn't welcoming us, so let's move on to the next one. It's also important to notice what Jesus' command doesn't say. He told them, shake the dust off your feet, not kick the dust off your feet and onto theirs. In other words, he didn't instruct his disciples to handle rejection with anger or retaliation. Jesus' instruction to the disciples shows us that rejection doesn't have to hurt us or stop us. We can let it roll off our backs and keep moving forward. And we can have a secure base and anchor of belonging in Jesus too. I mean, if only it were that easy, right? But I think you and I both know that it's not. It's not in our nature at all to willingly put ourselves in situations where we could be rejected. In fact, it's the complete opposite. It's our instinct to run from those situations. For about 2 years between a really bad breakup with a long-term girlfriend and when I met my wife, Abby, I dated very unsuccessfully. There were girls I met here at church, through mutual friends, and even on dating apps, but none of them worked out, and all of them ended in some form of rejection. Now, the last one was especially bad. It was the kind of situation where I got strung along, and the girl wouldn't just commit to either exploring a relationship with me or leaving me alone. Eventually, I ended up telling her that I really wasn't interested in playing games and kind of shook the dust off my feet and walked away. And when I did, I swore to myself that I was done dating for a while, and that if God had someone he wanted to put in my life, he would do it, and I would know that he was doing it. Now, just to be clear, this wasn't about her being a terrible person or me trying to show her what's up or anything like that. It was about pursuing what God had for me and trying to be open to that on his terms, not mine. It was a matter of days after I said that when Abby first walked into my life. And as they say, the rest is history. But here's the thing. It wouldn't be history if I had let the previous rejection take over and if I had run away from anything that resembled that rejection. I had to learn how to be okay with rejection in order to overcome it. And you can too. Here are a couple ways that you can start. First, you have to break down your walls. Now, I don't mean literal physical walls. The walls I'm talking about are the ones that we build up when we're rejected. Our mind's number one priority is to protect us from pain or hurt, and when we're rejected, we naturally build up a wall to prevent something like that from happening again. These walls are supposed to protect us from hurt, but what they actually end up doing is putting a barrier between us and other people. So, yes, the wall is protecting us, but it's also keeping us from experiencing love and connection. So we can't live behind the walls. We have to break them down, even if it means having to face rejection. However, a healthy way we can protect ourselves is by setting good boundaries. It's not always people we don't know that make us feel rejected. It can be the people closest to us, too. If you find yourself in relationships where you feel rejected frequently, it's okay to set a boundary in that relationship. In a way, it's exactly what Jesus did when he told the disciples to shake the dust off their feet. Being okay with rejection doesn't mean that we should ignore the source of that rejection, so don't be afraid to set healthy boundaries. You know, there was a prayer that both Jesus and the disciples would have been really familiar with. Jesus quotes it to them just before he sends them on the mission that we talked about earlier. It comes out of the book of Psalms. Let's read it together. Those who live in the shelter of the Most High will find rest in the shadow of the Almighty. This I declare about the Lord. He alone is my refuge, my place of safety. He is my God, and I trust him. When you feel rejected, take a moment and say a prayer like this. Words like these can help you release rejection and the need to build up walls, because God is the only fortress that you really need. We saw in the story about the disciples that Jesus was the secure base they needed to go out into the world and share what he was doing. He was their foundation where they could turn to receive love, encouragement, and protection after dusting off their rejection. So imagine Jesus as your secure base and refuge. His love can help you go out and take risks, even in the face of rejection, and keep going. Knowing that Jesus holds us and keeps us safe in our feeling of rejection can help us unlock a level of love and connection that we won't know if we build walls and hide behind them, or if we respond to rejection with anger and hate. You can be secure in knowing that when people reject you, Jesus never will.